When people think of VR-ready PCs, they think of huge builds with massive power and giant cases. We've talked a lot about VR-ready laptops and how they're challenging that perception, but what about mini PCs for the living room? Well, ZOTAC is all about tiny boxes, and their line of Magnus VR-ready PCs is aiming to take a spot next to the TV and bring VR to the masses. First, ZOTAC makes all kinds of small PCs called ZBoxes. Their Magnus line is the top of the pack, but still seriously small as PCs go. The smaller two are just 8.27 by 7.99 by 2.45 inches, and they pack either GTX 1060 or 1070 graphics cards inside. Yeah, the ZOTAC Magnus boxes are the smallest VR PCs currently on the market. To give you a sense of just how compact we're talking here, this is the ZOTAC next to a full-size ZOTAC Pascal graphics card. If you're not familiar with ZOTAC's boxes, they come either as complete PCs or DIY kits. For the DIY bare bones, you'll need to add RAM, an SSD, and an operating system. The 1060 and 1070 models were super easy to open up to swap out internals. We took off all the sides here just to check it out, but you only need to remove the bottom panel to install components. The fully loaded ZOTAC ZBox Magnus EN1070 runs for $1,500, while the barebones 1070 version is $1,200 and the 1060 version is $1,000. As for graphics, the options are the latest NVIDIA GTX 1060, 1070, and 1080 GPUs. All versions are the mobile variety, but don't think the new Pascals are like the last-gen mobiles. NVIDIA made the decision to align the desktop and mobile GPUs so they have roughly the same amount of power. The GTX 1070 here is only about 10% slower than the monster ZOTAC GPU next to it. Pretty sweet. The 1060 and 1070 use an Intel i5-6400T quad-core CPU. The T means this is a low-power model, but it's not a mobile CPU, it just draws less power. Again, about 10% less powerful than the full-throttle version. The more expensive 1080 version has a Skylake i7-6700 non-K variety. The 1070 comes with 8GB of RAM, expandable up to 32 at 2133 MHz speeds. The barebones 1060 and 1080 we have here don't come with RAM, but you can get up to 32 gigs in there. For storage on the 1070, we're looking at a 120GB M.2 SATA SSD, along with a 1TB 2.5-inch spinner. All three versions have M.2 slots for super fast NVMe SSDs and 2.5-inch drive bays. With up to 32 gigs of RAM, an M.2 and a 2.5-inch SSD, these can be spec'd out to be beastly little boxes. Now, considering the size of these boxes, there's quite a few input-output options. All three have one USB 3.1 Type-C and one USB 3.1, along with an SD card reader in the front. The 1080 box has the added benefit of an HDMI output on the face, making it perfect for VR enthusiasts. All of these Magnus boxes can support up to 4 displays, 2 HDMI 2.0 and 2 DisplayPort 1.3. The double HDMI is actually really important. Some PCs with normal graphics cards only have one HDMI output. Since VR systems like the Vive and Rift use HDMI, it makes hooking up a second HDMI TV or monitor impossible. This is personal experience talking. So, having multiple HDMI ports means ZOTAC is thinking about real-world usage, not just specs. It also ships with a Wi-Fi, SMA antenna, and Bluetooth 4.0, as well as 2 LAN ports for those of you who like to be hardwired. You can see here, they're smaller than the Xbox One and the PlayStation 4, with more power and wider capability. The black plastic isn't really all that fancy. We would have liked to see some styling options to allude to the crazy powerful GPUs inside. In fact, ZOTAC's own graphics cards are some of the best around. We'd love to see the Magnus look like their cards with the fancy textures and colors. The important detail is the ZOTACs are extremely stable in real-world usage. Over the holidays, we tested out a bunch of VR-ready devices. After having all kinds of problems with an Acer laptop, Asus laptop, and a desktop with only one HDMI port, the ZOTAC was the only device stable enough. Also, we had problems with other PCs using overclocked GPUs and other fancy features. While those are useful for tweaking normal gaming performance, the custom software can cause serious problems with VR. The ZOTACs, thankfully, keep out the bloatware. Also, ZOTAC claims their little boxes stay quiet even during heavy usage, and we can back that claim up. Sure, there's some fan noise, but it definitely requires leaning close to actually notice it. The Magnus line aren't the most powerful VR machines, but they're the smallest, and that's quite an achievement. Even a year ago, this form factor would have been hard to imagine with a GTX 10 series card, and the idea of having it replace your console as an entertainment center is very exciting. Portability and power from a desktop? We're all about that. and stability to boot. We ran these for 3 days of non-stop VR action with barely a break. So hats off to ZOTAC for making the best itty-bitty VR box available. Thanks for watching, and subscribe for more VR and PC related news.